makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part.
Yesterday was a sad day for the progressive movement in the U.S. Candidate Nina Turner, who was formerly one of the most visible supporters of Bernie Sanders during his two presidential runs in 2016 and 2020. She was unfortunately defeated by an establishment candidate, Shontel Brown, who received endorsements from luminaries like Hillary Clinton and quite a number of funds from dark money. So here's the results of that election. Shontel Brown won with 50.2%, Nina Turner with 44.5%. It was kind of close, not that close. And what was really, I think, heartbreaking about this is that Nina Turner had basically been leading the polls during the entire race. And in fact, a couple of months ago, she was leading by a huge margin. And in fact, it was that huge margin that really caused a lot of these other establishment figures like Hillary Clinton to jump in and endorse Brown. And for a lot of other super PACs to get involved and give millions towards Brown's campaign. So, you know, in the US, if you have money, you win elections. Doesn't matter how popular you are with the grassroots. Doesn't matter how many doors you go knocking. And that's a shame because Nina Turner did not accept dark money, did not accept anything other than basically, you know, small donations. And yeah, this is, look, one thing that one has to say is that it's never been easier in the US to win elections against establishment candidates, and we've had successful people do it. I mean, everyone in the squad is essentially ran against a big money opponent and managed to beat him. But there's still no guarantee that that's going to happen. So by and large, when progressives run, they will probably lose. But the odds of them winning keeps getting bigger and bigger, and that is encouraging. And it pretty much means that they'll stay in power for longer because none of them has yet to be voted out of office, and I don't think they will. So, you know, as time passes and things happen, these kind of policies become more appealing, and these kind of candidates become stronger in their position. So, for example, Cori Bush, who is also one of the more visible members of the squad. She led a recent protest outside the Capitol in order to extend the eviction moratorium ban. And she lost her first race against her opponent, which was part of a 52-year dynasty in Missouri, political dynasty. And she lost her first race, and then she came back and won again. So the odds that we'll one day see Nina Turner in Congress are still pretty high, I would think. Especially if someone like Shontel Brown doesn't really do much to make herself visible, which I doubt she will. And I'm going to show sort of her policies on her campaign site in a bit. If you haven't heard of Nina Turner, I just want to show one video of her from the 2020 primary, back in the good old days when Bernie was winning. And she appeared on MSNBC. And this was the kind of hardball answers that she would give. And that's why I really liked her.
The majority of Democrats who helped flip the House in 2018 were moderates. James Carville made the argument over the weekend that Senator Sanders isn't a Democrat, he's an ideologue. And we've got to get practical. If he is the candidate, he is not going to be able to help win over the Senate. And unless you have the Senate, if you've just got the White House, you ain't going to get nothing done.
Stephanie, does practical mean that the 89 or so million people who are uninsured or underinsured in this country continue to suffer? Does being practical mean that we don't take steps in this country to deal with climate chaos and bring world leaders to bear? Does being practical mean that we continue to prop up a legal system that is unjust in every stretch of the imagination, that bears its weight down on black men and black women, and then by extension, if you are Hispanic or indigenous or poor? Does being practical mean that we don't say to the American people that you deserve better than what you are getting, that's not the kind of practicality we want. Does practical mean that you hold fundraisers and wine caves with Swarovski crystals with billionaires who want to control this system? Does practical mean we continue to go with the status quo while 500,000 people sleep on the streets at night? That's not practicality. So with all due respect to Mr. Carville, what the American people in this country need, they need somebody that is unabashed and that has the courage and the conviction to stand up for them and to call out the rigging of this system. And that candidate is Senator Bernie Sanders.
But steps and a revolution are two different things. In order to get to a revolution, you've got to take steps. And what James Carville is saying is you've got to get to a practical place to make those changes.
Stephanie, the elites in 1930 said the same thing about FDR. And he said, I welcome your hatred. These are the same people that if the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was still alive, when he stood up before he was gunned down and he said to this country, he said the evils of this country, militarism, materialism, poverty, and racism. Those are those same people. So now if President FDR had listened to those people, or if the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King had listened to those people, we would not progress as a nation. So every generation, we got the naysayers, baby. But what the folks of this country need, they need somebody that's going to stand up for them. Senator Sanders is known as the Amendment King. He knows how to get things done. But what people need is to be able to call upon somebody that's not going to capitulate.
Senator Sanders.
That is Nina Turner. I thought that was exactly the way that a progressive candidate should handle herself or himself in an interview. So, yeah, I was a really big fan of her. I kind of wish if Bernie Sanders had gotten the nomination, she would have been the VP pick. But yeah, unfortunately, this is what happened. Now, let's understand why she lost, despite having such a colossal lead. So, in terms of fundraising, she actually did a better job than her opponent. And she got 4.5 million in fundraising, which is pretty impressive. I mean, think about it. This is just one district in Ohio. And that's how much money you need to raise to win an election in the United States. And yeah, she did not take any dark money. Whereas her opponent raised 2.1 million in total, which is less than half. But here's what's scary about what Brown raised, because her donations weren't. So if you look at the Political Action Committee donations that Nina Turner received, it was basically 107,000. So quite tiny in the grander scheme of things. By the way, PACs are not dark money. Super PACs are dark money, and we'll see exactly what's the difference. And yeah, she raised 2.1 million, and well, her PAC donations were a bit more substantial. Got money from Robert Kraft of all people. But here's the scary bit. So outside funding, she received 2 million from the Democratic Majority of Israel PAC. And that is a bucket load of money. So that money isn't going to her. That's why it's dark money. That money basically just gets funneled towards, in this case, ads. So the reason why this is the funding that you get from super PACs is so much more problematic is because it can usually get focused entirely on one thing. So the money that Nina Turner raised, and that also Shontel Brown raised on their own, that has to cover the cost of running the campaign. And clearly someone who's running a grassroots campaign like Nina Turner is going to end up spending quite a lot of money on keeping that operation running. Whereas this is just basically 2 million in ads. That's insane. That makes a huge difference. The bang for your money that you get from this kind of funding is obviously much bigger. So yeah, that is scary. There was a tweet here that showed how much money they got from this. These are all outside funding or PACs. And so yeah, this is Democratic Majority for Israel, almost $2 million. And another third way, I thought this was a think tank. I was not aware that they were involved in actually financing funding campaigns. I could be wrong. They might be doing this, or this might be a different organization than the one that I'm aware of. But yeah. And well, this is the Democratic majority for Israel. And they almost always, invariably, put in millions of dollars against progressive candidates. They've done this with others. I think they did it to Cory Bush as well. And yeah, their entire policy revolves around, who is going to be better for Israel. They don't really seem to care about anything else. And well, yeah, that was a game changer. That did allow Shontel Brown to even the odds in terms of funding by the time of the election. And yeah, this is third way. So I thought this was a think tank, but I clearly, the typical centrist think tank. Like, if you could think of a more stereotypical centrist think tank than third way, I struggle to find any more centrist than this. And yeah, this was their statement. Once again, the pundits and the Twitterverse got it wrong, and Democratic voters picked the moderate Shontel Brown over the candidate ordained by the far left. Yeah, so there's a case to be made that these groups aren't really left in any way. They're actually like right wing. Apparently, I read somewhere that third way's donors are primarily, they're the people who fund them are primarily Republican donors. So this could be basically like a Trojan horse of money going in to influence the left from the right, because obviously the right benefits from having groups like this and from having policies that are broadly aligned in terms of being pro-business, pro-market, and anti-worker. So yeah, that is third way. I mean, given their statement, I guess they were involved with this funding. I wasn't aware that they behaved like a PAC. Anyway, here's what was problematic about the funding that she got. So, as you know, as a result of the Citizens United ruling in 2010, it has basically any group of people can organize and finance a campaign through like ads and things like that with pretty much unlimited spending. And there's a rule in the decision, or rather in the law, in which candidates can have a relationship with these groups, or rather they can't have a relationship with groups. So in theory, a super PAC is not allowed to coordinate its campaign efforts with the actual campaign. But of course, this is the US, and there are ways around this. And the way that they do it is what's called a red box. So the websites of candidates, somewhere there, they have an area which is red. And it's the only part of their website which is usually red. And that is kind of the signal for super PACs to go look at that section of the website and use whatever resources there are there to make ads from. So they pick snippets of videos, things like that, or they make like summaries of what their some of their proposals are. Rather, what they're basically doing is kind of writing a small script for the eventual super PAC ad to be based around. And so in her website, we can go to the media section. And yeah, by the way, the only quotes here are from like pro-Israel groups. That is scary. Basically, no one ever said anything good about her except pro-Israeli lobbies. That is sad. That is absolutely sad. So yeah, here's the red box, right? So you can see exactly what the talking points are. That's the purpose of it, to put the talking points. So the super PAC basically just goes to the website, sees, oh, these are the talking points to make a video. Great. Oh, she has a link to the videos that I should also use for my own video. So that's the red box. It's incredibly sleazy. Incredibly sleazy. But again, this is how US elections unfortunately work. Now, the funding is one thing. I still think that given the fact that they were overall pretty much tied, if you include all the outside funding, I mean, still Shontel Brown did not manage to get more money, raise more money than Nina Turner did. So in theory, they should have been kind of even going into the polls. I already explained that because of Nina Turner's, grassroots style of campaigning, it may have been more expensive than Shontel Brown's, which relied more on ads. But it still is, it's disgusting for many reasons, because that's not how you should win an election. And if you didn't have big money behind you, how many people would you have gotten as excited to donate that amount of money, that 4.5 million, that 4 million war chest that Nina Turner obtained through small donations? So there's various degrees of voter engagement. There's voters who will just see an ad. They probably don't care much about the campaign. They'll see an ad sponsored by Democratic Majority for Israel or some other shit group like that, and that'll just make them flip. And it doesn't really reveal the kind of engagement that someone who actually donated to a campaign. If you donate to a campaign, that is a much higher level of engagement than you have with just looking for an ad and then voting on the basis of that ad. And that's, you would think that a democracy should be built around people who are more engaged with their candidates than people who just saw an ad. And yeah, so that is why I think it's in general, it's not fair. It's not that the election result was unfair based on the money that they had, even given the benefit of the doubt that maybe Nina Turner's campaign was slightly more expensive, but probably not that much. It's the fact that Shontel Brown, in any other universe where you didn't have the lax restrictions on outside funding, in any other universe where that was the case, Shontel Brown would have never had a shot. Never had a shot. So that is sad. And there were also mistakes on the part of Nina Turner. I think her record... So the only problem with people like Nina Turner is that often they say things that ends up hurting them in the long run. And she made a statement later in 2020 in The Atlantic that was used against her quite strongly during the campaign. So she said, Nina Turner, co-chair of the Sanders campaign, told me she has no appetite for the choice she faces, this being between Biden and Trump. It's like saying to someone, you have a bowl of shit in front of you, and all you've got to do is eat half of it instead of the whole thing. It's still shit. Now, for those who think, including myself, that Biden was simply the lesser evil, a quote like that will resonate. The problem is when you have to sway a significant sector of the electorate that genuinely thinks Biden was a good candidate, like a good human being, just because they went through 4 years of Trump derangement syndrome, and then therefore think that anything that isn't Trump is amazing, awesome, great. Well, it's gonna be a bit tougher to bring those people in your orbit when you have a record of saying that their candidate is shit. And I do think that the one positive thing, so I made a video on Bernie Sanders, sort of bended over backwards in an interview with Crystal Ball defending Joe Biden. And I think progressive leftists should not have to resort to those kind of performative gymnastics on someone who deserves to be criticized for their lack of action. But this is still a leap to start using the rhetoric implying that one of the candidates is actually shit, you know, physical shit. So, you know, your public figures, you need to be a bit responsible with what you say. But I don't want to assume that this was the only reason that Nina Turner lost, because it's really frustrating to know that you can have all the arguments in the world. You can run a great campaign. You can have thousands of people knocking on doors for you while your opponent merely resorts to super PAC ads. You can do all that, and then still just one comment is enough to derail your campaign. I mean, that is illustrative of the uphill struggle that progressives face. That I've always, the best analogy that I can think of is a football game, or whatever sport you want. You know, in football, if you want to beat, and I'm talking about soccer, okay, for the Americans, it's actually called football. So if you want to beat, you know, Brazil or Germany or France, literally any country in the world can beat them, but you have to play a perfect game, and you kind of have to hope that they screw up, and that's your only hope of beating them. And they can beat you, you know, playing half-assed if they want to. So you have to play a perfect game, and even then there's no guarantee that you'll win it. And that is the scale of the struggle that they face. And it's not insurmountable. Just like in football, for example, small teams win the FA Cup in England occasionally. It's not always Man U, it's not always Arsenal. Small teams sometimes lift the trophy, but usually they don't. But you know, there is still hope. There's plenty of cases where they have surmounted these obstacles. It's not impossible to win an election being a progressive running on a grassroots campaign, relying on small donations. It has happened, and it'll keep on happening. And these people will continue to score victories. Cory Bush's victory, getting the government to extend the eviction mandate, was one of the best things that any progressive leftist in the US has done in recent memory. And people will remember that. They will see that these people get things done. And I think they're aware now, because they've also received a lot of criticism, not just from the dipshits like the Jimmy Dores of the world, but there has been criticism of them, legitimate, I would say, that they probably haven't fought enough. And I suspect that they'll learn from these mistakes, and moving forward will be much more aggressive in pushing a progressive agenda. So again, it's sad that Nina Turner didn't win. Thought she was a great candidate. Would have been incredibly amazing to have someone who gives responses like this, give them in Congress, not just at MSNBC. But I guess we'll have to wait. But I have a feeling this is not nearly the end of her political career. So yeah, bad luck, but yeah, I think she still has a lot of she has a future in US politics. Let's see what happens. If you like this video, please like, please share, please subscribe, most importantly, and have a very good day.